Well, we focus on the alarming rate of unemployed youth in the country as the market expects the latest jobs data. Analysts have said that the fourth quarter labour force survey will reveal that South Africa's overall unemployment rate remains at historically high levels. It's also been expressed that marginal drops, including that 1.0% fall recorded in the third quarter, is not enough to make a dent. Founder and executive chairman at the South African Youth Economic Council, Bonga Makhanya, joins me in studio for this conversation. Thank you so much for your time, Bonga. We know that the youth unemployment in South Africa remains at record highs, but your expectation this time around, especially with jobs being shed due to load shedding and the likes?
Good morning to Misa, and good morning to all the listeners of Newzroom Afrika. Thank you once again for having us. I think our expectations are not that high in terms of expecting any drastic change in terms of the labour demographics, and particularly when it comes to youth participation in the labour market. I think over, post-1994, South Africa has been quite sluggish in terms of unemployment generally, but worse for youth. So we expect that to continue. We have just come back from the devastating effects of COVID-19, where global supply chains have been hard hit. Recently, the Russia-Ukraine, conflict, and now in our own more closer to home, the devastating effects of load shedding, which have had severe impact on more particularly SMMEs and youth-owned businesses, which has worsened the crisis in terms of youth participation in the economy. So we expect that to continue, and we don't expect anything different because ultimately it's been the same type of people overseeing the same the issues that we've been faced with post probably even 1994.
How much of a concern then is it that the number of unemployed graduates in South Africa continues to grow? We saw recently figures from StatsSA talking about an increase in the provision for the 350 grant in social relief for graduates, and also if graduates are not being placed in jobs or can't find jobs, what's to be said about the unskilled South African youth? Because there's a barrier to entry, Bonga, when we talk about fees into higher education institutions.
No, definitely, and that's why I think as a council we've always called for the strengthening and supporting of the TVET college system, because we have a serious crisis in this country of young people who leave high school quite early, and they are not in any training, or they don't have any skills to apply themselves in the market, and that's where the TVETs need to step in. That's where your vocational colleges need to step in to train and upskill those people to make sure that even though they might not have gone to an academic institution because they don't really qualify, but they have gone to a TVET college where they can acquire basic skills and they can apply themselves, start their own businesses, your plumbing businesses, your electricity type of installation, all those small-scale businesses which people might overlook. People that, if you look at in terms of the informal sector, a lot of people are running credible, sustainable businesses doing those small type of skills. So we need the strengthening of the TVET college system to ensure that young people who have exited the schooling system from maybe grade 9 or grade 10 are still able to apply themselves in the market. Because right now we have a serious crisis of about 3 million young people who are neither in employment and neither in training. They end up resorting to all sorts of criminality and even now substance abuse because they've been left completely alone and are in a state of complete hopelessness. Even for those who've managed to get qualification or managed to get some sort of skill in an institution of higher learning, still come back and they're sitting at home with their degrees, with their master's degrees, and are subjected to all sorts of type of internship programs where you find a master's graduate earning 3.5 in maybe a treasury program and something like that. So we need more deliberate programs in terms of employment opportunities for graduates. Those who are looking for work must be given some sort of a grant, 1.5 to 3.5 grants that can keep them going whilst they're still looking for a job. Because really, the private sector needs to come on board in terms of absorbing those young people. In the South African labour market, you have about 16 million people that are currently employed. Of that 16 million, only 1 million are employed by the state, meaning 15 million are employed directly by the private sector. And if you look at the top 20 JSE listed companies, all of them every year without fail record profits. So businesses doing well in the South African economy in terms of performance of the JSE listed companies, whether it's profits, whether it's even the size of their asset base. But we don't see that translating into job creation, new industries, new infrastructure growth in terms of the private sector side. So we need a patriotic private sector. Your Anglos need to come on board. Your banks need to come on board to say, how can we absorb these young people at a much higher rate, particularly even those with the skills, because they're the ones who are also sitting at home despite having, a tertiary qualification.
Lastly, does the South African Youth Economic Council believe that there's political will in this country for the deliberate action that you are essentially calling for in the government as well as from the private sector? Because only a framework of policy and regulation is going to get towards that direction.
No, definitely. And I think, Shem, the South African government probably at this point in time has no ideas in terms of how it's going to deal with this youth unemployment crisis. I mean, you speak to any department or any SOE and ask them, what are you doing for youth development, or what are you doing for youth empowerment? And they'll tell you that they spend maybe 5 million on youth. And when you zoom into that 5 million on youth in that line department, you find they're speaking about an internship program where young people are earning 2.5 and have no prospects of being absorbed into that same department.
No sustainability
So
programs.
there are no deliberate programs of empowerment at a business level where we're saying, whether it's, DHEADS or any department really, if you're a youth-owned company, come onto our supplier database, supply us with these critical services, and we'll make sure that in a year or 3 years from now, you'll be a credible, black business that is now successful through our deliberate program, whether it's enterprise supply development or whatever. So we need more deliberate programs like that, which will create, credible youth-owned businesses. And we also need more credible job opportunities for young people, because currently what's in the market now is people reducing young people to stipends of 3.5 or 2.5. And these are probably one of the best in terms of skills that we have in the country, people that have degrees, they have masters, but they are being subjected to all sorts of types of meaningless and redundant posts within the state.
Thank you for your time. Innovative ideas needed there as we speak to Bonga Makhanya of the SA Youth Economic Council in our build-up to the latest quarterly labour force survey to be released by StatsSA later today. Of course, youth unemployment remaining an issue in South Africa. And that's how we wrap up on the business desk for this morning.